John Jones, the goat, the duck, or the human scumbag. I was going to make this video, but some of these videos do appeal to people, but you might not. This one might not so much, because normally I do try and do cool things straight down the middle, and I still will. But yeah, I have my opinions the same as anyone else. But I normally try, when I do videos like this, to be a little bit more professional. Whether I can keep doing that today, I don't know. John Jones. So there is going to be a split in the community, the MMA community, and I'm an MMA guru fan. I'm in that sort of camp of, you know, trolls, if you like. But I also do like UFC, boxing as well. But UFC in the last 15 years, much more so, because of how bad boxing got at one point. So anyway, John Jones. There's also the recent news as well that John Jones may have retired due to the fact that another incident that he's had outside of the cage has caught up with him. Something that happened in January, February, where there was an RTA, and a woman claimed to have woke up half naked in a car. She claimed he was driving the car. Not like John Jones to run away from a car that is crashed with the woman in the car. Oh yeah, that's right. It is like John Jones to do that. So there is actually some clout to the idea that he may have retired because of that as well. But I am not buying that that's a full reason for a retirement. I think he might try and put things on. I don't know. Like, you know, either he's done something so bad he knows he's not going to get away with it, or John Jones has always been a chancer. So I don't necessarily buy that. I believe it could contribute, and it may have contributed to why it's happened so quickly. But I'm not convinced that's the entire reason for him quitting. I just think that maybe it might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Who knows? Who knows with John Jones? But another out of cage incident that involves a woman. So the ones that happen with guys tend to be very good interactions. Very good. Like smelling their hair and touching them in very strange ways for a guy that constantly talks about his masculinity. Whilst at the same time, women generally don't tend to do so well, and the ones that don't do very well, like girlfriends, end up in a pool of blood. So, and you may say, what relevance is this to the questions, or at least the GOAT question? Well, we remember Muhammad Ali as the greatest. Was he the greatest? It's arguable. He's one of the greatest. But he was the greatest because of everything that he was. So I think it does matter. I think it does matter because he was the greatest because of everything that he was. And he had his faults, yes. But John Jones doesn't just have his faults. Like Conor McGregor, people make so many excuses for him. These two people don't just have faults. They are fucking scumbags. John Jones hit a pregnant woman's car and only came back so that he could retrieve the drugs that he had left on site, got his drugs, and then left and ran off again. And you could say he was a younger man and whatever else, but if what happened this February comes out to be anything similar, well, he hasn't changed at all. As well as the other times when he was headbutting a car. And just the multiple times that he's just let everybody down. And then what amazing is that he's got such loyal fans. And you know, in fairness to him, I actually feel sorry for them, because they'll come on videos like this and they'll fight me for it about making this video. And I actually feel sorry for some of them because of the fact that he has constantly let them down. You know, he went up when he was talking about heavyweight. It took 3 years to get up to heavyweight. You know, Daniel Cormier just went up to heavyweight and fought the best, won a title. And he won't be considered the greatest. But John Jones is, after spending 3 years waiting for Ngannou to die. And then when he didn't die, but he left, he went and fought the weakest link in the heavyweight division. Won a title, and then has been absolutely unwilling to step into a cage unless it was against the senior citizen who needed, a stick to hold himself up. Tell me when I'm lying. Tell me when I'm lying. So, here's what I remember about Jon Jones. When he came on the scene, if you're still with this video, because a lot of haters won't be. When he came on the scene, he was fast, he was dynamic. A lot of people pull his record to pieces, but you can only fight whoever is there. And he fought for the best of the era. Yes, some of them were aging, but they were still, nevertheless, capable of getting their hands on that championship. And he disabled them from keeping it. The championship, after Liddell lost it, was just transitional constantly. Jon Jones came in and smashed everybody. He had one performance where he showed his age against, I was going to say Mark Hamill. What's his name? The deaf guy. I think his name is Hamill, but I'm confusing him with the guy who played Luke Skywalker. Anyway, he, other than a disqualification against him, he was destroying everybody. And he was dynamic, fast. He was doing moves we'd never seen before at that time, spinning elbows that were just out of this world. Really, really a dynamic fighter. And he stayed that way for a long time. He had a good long run. And then unfortunately, we found out that he was using performance-enhancing drugs and things like that. And he started to fight less and less because he was banned more and more. And then the big fights he did have were tarnished by the fact that he was on PEDs or other things. So those great fights are still great fights in our memories, but some of them have been struck from the record. I think one of the results against Cormier was struck from the record. So yeah, we still remember it that way, but that's not how the record sees it. So it's really hard to judge with Jon. He beat the best that could be thrown at him. Lyoto Machida, who everybody thought was unbeatable. Jones, I think, if I remember rightly, choked him out standing up. I could be wrong, but I thought he choked him out standing him up and then just let go of him. And the guy just slumped to the ground. This was the guy that people couldn't get their hands on because he was in and out. What was amazing about Jon Jones for me, what I always thought was a talent that nobody seemed to pick up on, was that Jon Jones would be told, if you fight this fighter, you need to avoid his jiu-jitsu. If you fight this fighter, you need to avoid his wrestling. If you need to fight this fighter, you need to avoid his boxing, because they'd all be specialists at something. And Jon Jones would ignore that advice, and he would go and box the boxer. He would go and wrestle the wrestler. He would go and jiu-jitsu the jiu-jitsu guy. And you know what? He'd win. And it was amazing. Daniel Cormier, that was the whole thing with Daniel Cormier. He was going to show him, I'm going to take you down. He told him right from the very first time meeting him. And he meant it, and he did it. He beats people at their own game. That was what was amazing about Jon Jones, was he would take somebody else's strength and shove it up them and show them, I can do it just as good as you. It was amazing. And those performances were amazing. And that is the talent that never gets really discussed about Jon Jones. After a certain point in his career, like by the Daniel Cormier time, there were great fights and everything, but the drugs were heavily involved. So much water had already passed on the bridge. Since then, you look at how many times he's fought. It's not been very many. He came back, maybe had 3 fights in quick succession, then disappeared for years, stuff like that. So he's either been on bans, and people forget. He didn't just walk away. He was on bans a lot of the time. And then there was times he just didn't fight. And I think, well, it doesn't matter what I think. So people like to say that he's a multi-generational fighter and he's beat the best of every generation. Well, he beat Stipe. Stipe was the best at one time, but when he fought him, was he? So Jon Jones was the best of last generation. He really was the very, very best, and he may well be the greatest of all time, but with the asterisk of being a drugs cheat and the most heavily caught drugs cheat in UFC history. That is a big asterisk to have. And as a person, he is showing himself to be a scumbag, and in my opinion, in the way that he treats, but not just women, but people, and just the way that he has this strange, entitled kind of attitude. He has something repressed, some little secret that he's got. Let's just leave it at that. And rather than just come out of it and say it and get it off his shoulder, he's trying to take it out on the world and himself. And I don't really care. That's none of my business. I don't care what he does. I'm glad he's gone from the sport. He's been irrelevant for a long time. He was amazing in his time. But for the last 8 years, he didn't need to be around. And people won't want to hear this part. For as much as Jon Jones does have an argument for being the greatest of all time, for the reasons I mentioned earlier on, beating people at their own game, being unbeatable, he in his last few fights, if you watch him, dropped off significantly, other than when Cyril Gane laid over for him. If you look at the fights against Reyes, and there was another guy before him, I always forget his name, was it Thiago? There's too many people with the same name. It might have been Thiago someone. Anyway, both those fights were completely and utterly lackluster. He just didn't have that. He didn't have it anymore. Whatever it was, that little spark of magic he used to have. I'm not blaming him for it. We probably should have walked away a long time ago. And none of this would be going on now. So, like I said in my other video, maybe the UFC put too much pressure on him to fight, because he did say he didn't want to fight. He did say he didn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. He did say he wanted to retire. And then Dana White said, let me talk to him. Dana White normally encourages people to retire, so he says. And yet he talked Cormier out of it, and yeah. So, I do think people put all the blame on Jon Jones, and perhaps they shouldn't. But I also think that, Dana White wanted him to be the Michael Jordan so that the UFC had a Michael Jordan. And they have been willing to glaze him, to bury all the terrible things that he's done and continues to do, to bury some of the terrible matches and decisions that he's had, like the Dominic Reyes decision. And he's paid them back in the way that they deserve, and that's why Dana White gave him 8 seconds, because that's all he felt he deserved, because he was angry. He just didn't want to show it. But they got what they deserved in this one. The only person who didn't was Tom Aspinall. But yeah, so make no mistake, Jon Jones was a phenomenal fighter. And even in later years when he wasn't so good, it's hard to see anyone beating him, as in knocking him out. Let's put it that way. You know, I mean, I saw Daniel Cormier, who could hit him with everything but the kitchen sink, and he couldn't hurt Jon. You know, the guy really did have it all. And but he also pissed away his career. He could have had a lot more fights. He could have done a lot more things. He could have had a lot more achievements. And as I said earlier on, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but he also could have been a bigger pay-per-view draw. But he was too two-faced to do that, and tried to put on a nice guy act. But he could have been a bigger pay-per-view draw. Because he was actually quite shit at selling pay-per-views. His pay-per-views aren't even close to the biggest pay-per-views, no matter how good he is. It's only now people are interested in seeing him fight. People weren't really going and paying, other than the hardcore Jon Jones fans, people weren't going and paying to watch his fights. Doesn't that come into the greatest of all time as well? You normally want to see him fight. And generally speaking, when it comes to pay-per-views, there's not an overwhelming flood of people that want to come and see Jon Jones fight. And that's been the case pretty much his whole career. I don't know the whole reason for that, but all of these things have to be taken into mind. Depends on how you rate the greatest. If you don't mind that he was a roid freak, and if you don't mind that he hid from the drug commission, if you don't mind all that, if you're okay with that, then I suppose, yeah, he really is the greatest of all time. If things like not fighting the best bother you, and he had, then you will be bothered by the fact that he has held championship belts since not fighting the best, and has still been considered to be the best, has still been in the pound for pound ranking despite not fighting pound for pound guys, whilst other people go up and down that list based on a few months passing. I'm in that camp. Like, Chael Sonnen says it best. When it comes to the UFC, we all strictly adhere to the rules we make up as we go along. And I see that with John Jones right now. We're going to split a community, and I'm going to enjoy it personally. And I could say, oh, it's a shame John Jones doesn't get the retirement he deserves. This is exactly the retirement he deserves. Exactly. And also, it's very fitting. He's lived a career of controversy, and it's ended in controversy. And I could still see him fighting again one day.